You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 239. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're talking about goal setting and dopamine. In fact, I've been reflecting on these topics quite a bit recently on the idea of goal setting for ADHDers and the role dopamine plays. And today, I want to think about how these two come together when it comes to ADHD brains. So to put things into context, what I first want to do is take a look at each of these topics individually. First, goal setting, and then dopamine, and then we're going to combine the ideas together. Sound good? All right. So first, let's talk about goal setting. And as I often like to do, let's start with a definition. According to Oxford Dictionary, a goal is an aim or desired result. Okay? An aim or desired result. According to Merriam-Webster, a goal is the end toward which effort is directed. The end toward which effort is directed. I think both of these definitions are really interesting when we think about what we are exploring today. And I think you'll understand what I mean as we dive in. So, if you've listened to the podcast for a minute, you have probably heard me say that a lot of us ADHDers have this love-hate relationship with goal setting. And honestly, this makes sense, okay? A lot of us love goal setting because there is the excitement and the novelty that comes along with it. There is the possibility, the potential to learn new skills and learn new ideas and finding that just right level of challenge, right? And we get to work towards something that we desire, that we want to have in our lives, okay? So it makes sense that a lot of us tend to love the idea of goal setting, love the goal setting process. Now, it also makes sense why a lot of us have the hate side of the relationship, or why many of us bounce back and forth between this love-hate relationship. Because in addition to all those reasons I just mentioned of why we love setting goals, a lot of us also carry quite a bit of baggage from the past with previous experiences when we're setting goals, both in terms of inner and outer baggage. So maybe you carry around a lot of outer baggage and you've said you were going to do something, you said you were going to reach a goal and you didn't. And then maybe you got a bunch of comments from other people, or people were counting on you to do the thing and you didn't, or people doubt you. You say you're going to do a goal and people are like, yeah, okay. Sounds like what you said last time. And you have all of this outer baggage that you start carrying around with you, and it makes the whole goal setting process and working toward goals a lot less fun. And that makes sense, right? And then we also have the inner baggage that a lot of us carry, okay? Maybe you carry around a lot of disappointment. Maybe you set a goal in the past that you genuinely wanted to reach. You worked so hard. You actually allowed yourself to believe in the possibility that it could happen. And then for one reason or another, it didn't. So we carry that around, this disappointment, this belief that we had, and then it shattered, okay? And then in both of these situations, a lot of us have developed quite a bit of doubt and skepticism. It kind of takes over the goal setting process. And we're like, yeah, okay, that is not for me. And regardless of how you feel about goals, okay, whether you are tipping toward the love side of goals or the hate side of goals, or you bounce back and forth, I think it's also important to acknowledge that working toward and mapping out goals is actually a significant hurdle for ADHDers because of our struggles with executive functioning. It's challenging for us to decide and clarify one goal and then trust ourselves in making that decision. It's hard for us to break down those goals into smaller steps, right? And then to prioritize them, to sequence them. So first we have to take the goal, choose it, and then chunk it down into smaller steps. That's super hard for our brain. Then we have to prioritize those steps, put them in the right order. That's super hard. And then we have to lean into self-motivation and take that first step. Also super challenging for the ADHD brain and our executive functions. And that brings me to the next point, which is that we also tend to deal with real big emotions, especially when we are doing something new, right? We deal with really big emotions. And when we think about taking those first steps, we have emotions like insecurity and doubt and fear and confusion and overwhelm. They might all come up when we think about taking those first steps. Of course, that's uncomfortable. Of course, we want to avoid that. And then let's say you manage to take those steps, but then you're working to establish and maintain your momentum as you're working toward those goals. Probably a whole lot more emotions are coming up: boredom, frustration, worry, resistance, irritation. You're probably dealing with perfectionism, and your brain is resisting the routine, and all or nothing thinking comes in. Okay? So if we just put all of these obstacles in context on a purely human level, whether you have ADHD or not, it makes sense that we experience these emotions when it comes to setting and working toward goals. As humans, we have evolved to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, and to conserve energy. This is what literally allowed us to survive as a species for so long. Okay? Now, in 2024, when this podcast is coming out, most of us don't have to worry so much in the way that our ancestors had to do thousands of years ago. Many of us don't have to worry about hunting game to ensure we have food for our next meal, right? Many of us don't have to worry about conserving our energy so we can run away from the lion on the savannah in order to survive, okay? That deep need to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy just isn't quite as intense for us in 2024. Nevertheless, our brain still thinks it is really important. And our outer world today makes it so easy to do that. Our world makes it so easy to continually seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. Okay? That's not necessarily a bad thing, but we want to be aware of that when we are going after big goals, because when we're going after a big goal, when we are challenging ourselves to stretch out of our comfort zone, it really challenges every single one of those areas where our brain has evolved to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. Because when we try something new, when we challenge ourselves, it's usually not super pleasurable. In fact, it can feel painful and it requires more energy than usual. So it makes complete sense why we resist this on so many levels. So with all of this in mind, of course, as ADHD brains, we have very mixed thoughts when it comes to goal setting. Yes, it brings novelty, it brings excitement, it brings the chance to learn and grow, it challenges us in so many ways, and it requires us to be challenged, to move through those big emotions. Now, despite all the challenges that I've already mentioned, I actually think the most prominent and painful, the most detrimental when it comes to working toward goals is what we often make it mean if and when things don't go as planned. As ADHDers, we pack on so much painful self-criticism. If and when we miss the deadline, we forget to follow through on something, or we fall off the wagon, even though there is no wagon, in one way or another. We drop into such criticism. Oh, I messed up again. There I go again. I am such a flake. I am so unreliable. Of course, this happened again. I never follow through. I just can't trust myself. Right? And then that starts leading to a bunch of shame. I can't believe I even thought I could do this. What was I even thinking? So much wrapped up in goal setting for ADHDers. No wonder we have such a mixed love-hate relationship. Okay, I'm going to set that aside for a minute. And now I want to move to dopamine. Dopamine is such a fascinating little neurotransmitter. Okay, it's this little chemical messenger in our brain that plays such a crucial role in the brain's reward system and motivation. Now, I think most of us, when we hear about dopamine, we tend to associate it with pleasure, with enjoyment. But that's not entirely accurate. I want to get a little more nuanced today because more accurately, the release of dopamine is more closely tied to the anticipation of a reward rather than the actual reward itself. So when we engage in activities or behaviors that are linked to a potential reward, the brain releases dopamine. Let me give you some examples to put this into context. So classic example would be playing the slot machine, okay? When you used to pull down a lever, right? There's this anticipation, you pull the lever, and are you going to get the 3 cherries or the 3 sevens or whatever? I have no idea. Whatever it is, right? You pull down the lever on the slot machine, do those 3 things line up? There's this anticipation of whether or not you are going to win. And that is what fuels the behavior. A little bit disturbingly, social media feeds work exactly the same way. They were literally inspired by the slot machine approach. Think about how you pull down at the top of your feed to refresh your phone's screen and see the newest updates, see who liked your post, okay? So we have that fuel of dopamine as we pull down the screen, refresh the screen. It's searching for and clicking the buy button on that thing you've been wanting and then waiting for it to arrive at your door. This release of dopamine acts as a signal that then reinforces and encourages us to keep doing that behavior, right? It encourages us to keep seeking those potential rewards. So in other words, dopamine is really all about the thrill of the chase, more so than the enjoyment of catching the thing, okay? This is really important. I'm going to say it again. Dopamine is all about the pursuit of something rather than the getting of something. Think about if you celebrate Christmas, for example, it's that anticipation of, it's the build up around planning and the events and the buying of gifts and the different parties before the holiday. That is where the dopamine builds up, right? It's not actually Christmas morning for most people. It's all of the anticipation before it. Or think about when you were little and you were planning out your birthday party, right? How much fun that was. You thought about the activities, sending out invitations, you got to pick out the party favors. All of this was so exciting, and that anticipation was fueling your excitement toward the day. Okay, what does this have to do with ADHD? Studies suggest that ADHD brains have fewer neurotransmitters, specifically dopamine and also norepinephrine, in our brain. Okay, this means that as ADHD brains, we are constantly seeking additional dopamine because our brains are understimulated. As ADHDers, we have an interest-based nervous system, interest-based, okay, rather than importance-based or priority-based. And as a side note, I have made a note to myself to do an entire episode on the idea of how do we work with this interest-based nervous system. So stay tuned. If you're not following this podcast yet, click the little plus button or wherever you follow along so that you get these episodes. But as a quick overview, what I mean with an interest-based nervous system is that we're able to get focused and generate the drive and the motivation to take action when we are driven by interest, by competition, by novelty, or by urgency. Okay, that's what fuels an interest-based nervous system. Interest, competition, novelty, urgency. No wonder, as ADHD brains, we are always driven to the next new thing, the next new idea, the next new rabbit hole. We are driven by that interest. And that, my friends, is when the dopamine is released the most. So I just want to highlight some key points here from this section on dopamine. Okay, so dopamine is primarily released in the pursuit of something, working toward something that you ultimately desire. Also, ADHD brains have less dopamine naturally in our brains, which makes it harder for us to self-motivate, harder for us to maintain that commitment to things when we're not genuinely excited about them. We have an interest-based nervous system wherein we are driven by the things that interest us, that bring us novelty, that we feel this sense of competition or this sense of urgency around. So let's pull this together, this look at goal setting and this look at dopamine, okay? ADHD brains are in search of dopamine. Dopamine is released in the pursuit of something. A goal, by definition, is an aim or desired result. It is the pursuit of something you desire. So in effect, a goal offers the potential for huge amounts of dopamine release as you're working toward that goal because you're pursuing something you want. And today I want to offer that as ADHD brains, working toward goals, if it is done with an ADHD-friendly, supportive approach, okay, working toward goals can be an incredibly supportive and powerful way to fuel that search for dopamine while also bringing you closer to the things you genuinely want in your life. Let's sit with that for a minute. This is big, especially for those of us who have a huge resistance to goals or the process of goal setting, or just simply believe that you can't do goals. I see you. I know it. And also, when we can set goals in a supportive way for your ADHD brain, it could actually provide exactly what your brain is looking for to help you keep moving forward in the direction you want to go. So, if this is true, then what's in the way? Because we also have a lot of evidence. Why do so many ADHDers have such strong resistance to setting goals and working toward goals and reaching goals? Why do we struggle with it? So I want to suggest that one of the biggest obstacles that we have as ADHDers when it comes to goal setting is that we're just not setting goals in a way that's supportive of an ADHD brain. We are not working with our executive functions. We are not putting in the scaffolding that our brains need to work toward, stick with, and follow through on that goal. Now, today we're going to talk about some key points of how we can actually do that. But if you really want to dive in, if you really want to take this work further, if you want to learn how to set supportive ADHD-friendly goals, learn how to stick with them, and follow through all the way to completion, definitely join us in We're Busy Being Awesome. Seriously, what are you waiting for? This is my small group coaching program. We take all the tools and the concepts that we explore here on the podcast and we combine them with real-time coaching so that you are implementing and learning and problem solving and growing exponentially. It is one thing to listen to the ideas and hear about them and think about them on the podcast. It is an entirely different world when you have weekly support, direct coaching, and accountability as you dive in, as you apply the ideas, as you shape them to fit your life and your unique brain. Okay, now the next group of We're Busy Being Awesome, the next cohort begins at the beginning of March. If you don't have your name on the wait list, get it on there now, okay? You do not want to miss this. I'm not going to offer the group again until the fall. Now, I'm not sure when this episode is actually coming out, so if enrollment isn't already open, you can get your name on the wait list and you'll be the first to know when it is open. If it is open when you're listening to this in the last few weeks of February or so, then let's go. It is time to work with your brain to get things done, to actually have time in your life to enjoy what matters most to you. Okay, so head to the link in the show notes or you can go to imbusybeingawesome.com/group. Okay, but for now, as I was saying, why is it that so many of us ADHD brains resist setting and working toward goals? So in addition to the fact that it is challenging for our executive functions, especially when we're not setting ADHD-friendly goals, it's also because what I have seen time and time again is that we add so much unnecessary heaviness to our goals overall. We make setting and working toward goals so serious. We take out all the fun when it comes to working toward and reaching our goals. It is not light. It is not playful. It is not an experiment. Instead, we make these goals so incredibly heavy by making them mean something about who we are as humans. If we miss a day, if we miss a week, if we miss some benchmark or we're quote unquote behind on some random timeline we set, we tend to get so discouraged. We beat ourselves up. We tell ourselves we've failed. We've fallen off the wagon. And we make it mean we never follow through, that we're unreliable, that we're untrustworthy. And then we tend to take it even further. We make it even more personal by not only believing that we, quote unquote, failed at the goal, but also somehow we as humans are failures. We start thinking that because we are several weeks behind this arbitrary timeline that we set, it somehow impacts our value as people. And it sounds ridiculous on the surface when I'm saying it out loud, but it's true. Again, I hear this over and over from people. And I get so heated about this because it couldn't be further from the truth. It's just not accurate. Your goal literally means nothing about who you are as a person. They are two totally separate things. You missed 2 days of writing. Start again. It doesn't mean anything about you. You are not your goal. Your success as a human has zero correlation to whether or not you went to bed at 10 o'clock every night this month. They're not the same. And we absolutely must separate these two. I usually don't speak in black and white terms of must and should and have to. This is one that I am strong in. We must separate who you are from your goal. You are not your goal. We must hold the entire goal setting process so much more loosely. How do we do that? How can we introduce play and curiosity and fun and delight into this process? How can we make it an art of experimentation? How can we shift our perspective? Because I'm telling you, this is possible. Even if you're not hitting your goal. Let me give you an example, okay? I decided that one of my business goals for Q1 was to work toward getting 500 new email subscribers on my list organically each month, my email list, okay? Organically, for those of you not in this space, means with no ads, okay? So you're just bringing people on in other ways, not using Facebook ads or anything. Okay, this is a huge stretch goal for me. For others who have really big lists, it might be nothing. For me, that's a huge goal. Normally, I bring about 250-ish people maybe per month. So I'm basically trying to double it. I have no idea how I'm going to do this each month, okay? In January, this month, it is, it's January 29th. I am not going to hit this goal, okay? I just checked my stats this morning. I'm at 274 new subscribers. That is so far away from 500. I have completely missed the mark. And guess what? I don't feel bad at all. It's okay. It's not a problem. In fact, my mindset when I set the goal in the first place was, let's see what we can do. 500 is ridiculous. Let's try it. Because even if I totally miss it, it still gets me trying new things. If I can get closer to bringing in 300 or 400 new people into this work each month, that's amazing. That's a win. Okay, again, I'm going to miss it this month. And that's okay because I get to check in and learn from it. And I get to do that because I'm fueled by curiosity and excitement and problem solving, which are things I love. I love problem solving. I can go in and go, oh, that didn't work. What might work better next time? What do I want to try? What new rabbit hole can I go down to help me figure out how to bring in more people next month? What am I going to try differently? What do I want to double down on? What actually worked? Okay, this is Dopamine City. I am so excited just describing this to you right now, okay? So we really need to separate who you are from your goal because I am also not thinking, oh my gosh, I failed as a human because I welcomed in 274 people to my email list. What? That's amazing. I am so stoked that they are here. And now I get to learn how to do even more. We need to learn how to make this process fun. We need to learn how to make it your right level of difficult. And again, if you want to find out how to do that, if you want to learn how to create your just right level of challenge, do join us in We're Busy Being Awesome. I will help you figure it out, and I will also teach you how to figure it out for yourself going forward, okay? So you have these lasting skills. But for now, let's talk about 5 key ways to help you set ADHD-friendly goals that will help you fuel your dopamine, okay? So you've already separated who you are from the goal. You're holding it lightly. That brings us to step 1, which is to make sure you actually want this goal. You've heard me talk about this before in different ways. You've heard me talk about the importance of having a full body yes rather than an intellectual yes or an intellectual should, or some goal someone else thinks you should reach. No, thank you. We are done with that. Okay. Give yourself the gift of a goal that you genuinely desire. Otherwise, we're not actually working toward a goal. Because remember, the definition of a goal is a desired result. If you don't desire that goal, that's not a goal. That's just doing something because you think you should. Make sure that you genuinely desire this goal before you take any action on it. Give yourself the gift of setting a true goal, which is something you genuinely desire. Number 2, focus on the behavior or the goal that you want rather than the thing that you're trying to stop doing or trying to change. Okay, this is especially effective when we are setting habit-based goals. It's a really powerful approach to help us fuel the fire and help us reinforce that desired result. Remind our brain, this is something that I want. This is something I want to continue pursuing. So for example, if your initial goal is to stop shopping and spending so much money, let's flip that. Okay, maybe your goal instead is to save X amount of dollars each week or each month. See how we're focused on what you want to do or want to create rather than what you're going to stop doing. Or if you want to stop ignoring your alarms when it's time to go to bed, maybe your goal instead is every time the timer goes off, you are going to pause for 2 minutes to make an intentional decision of whether or not you're going to go to bed. Okay? We're not focusing on, I'm going to stop ignoring my alarms. No, we're focusing on, I'm going to start pausing, practicing the art of the pause, and intentionally deciding. Okay? Focus on what you want. Tip number 3, always leave your brain the next tiniest step forward as you're working toward your goal. Now, you have heard me talk about breaking down the steps time and time again. Some of us resist this. Some of us just don't want to take the time, right? First of all, it's really hard for our brains to do this. Again, we talked about this at the top of the episode. It is more challenging for us to break down those steps into smaller pieces. Now, there are supports out there. You can use something like the Magic To Do app and things, but it is more challenging for us to break down a goal all the way from start to finish, okay? Additionally, some brains tend to get quite overwhelmed when we do break down all the steps and then you have to see them all, right? Because it's easy for the brain to start thinking, oh my gosh, there is so much here. I don't know how on earth I'm going to get through all of it, right? So sometimes we feel quite resistant to breaking down all the steps. If that's you, no problem, okay? Rather than thinking you have to break down all the steps, or even if you do break them all down, I think what's really powerful is to leave yourself the next tiniest action step forward that you know you can take the next day or the next time you return to the goal. Because that's giving your brain very clear action steps. You don't have to figure it out. You don't just look at your planner that says write book. Instead, you have the very tiny next action step for Tuesday at 10. For my subscriber goal today in my planner, I actually have 2 next steps. So I'm going to remind you, dear listener, to get on the wait list for We're Busy Being Awesome so that you can learn all my strategies to both set and reach your goals. And then I also know which Instagram post I'm going to share to remind people to sign up for my free ADHD routine revamp training. Okay? So make sure that you identify your next smallest step. Make those steps small and achievable. And every time you check it off the list, you're tracking your progress. You're fueling your momentum. You're fueling that dopamine as you pursue your goal. And that brings me to tip 4, which is to fuel your dopamine further by celebrating and tracking your progress. So as you keep taking those steps one by one closer to your final goal, be sure to actually recognize your progress. This is hard for us to do, okay? We've been conditioned to just kind of blow past all the steps and just expect ourselves to get there. Nope, we're going to pause that, okay? Show your brain what you're doing. Help your brain remember how much you've done. Notice what you've learned. See what you've accomplished. Celebrate how much you've moved forward. Okay? See the progress. Celebrate it. Feel it. Allow yourself to really be in the moment as you are tracking your progress and seeing how far you've come, because that's going to further fuel the dopamine. Showing your brain that you are in pursuit. You are on the way. And then tip number 5, this is an important one. Don't change the goal, change the timeline. So many of us get quite discouraged if we don't hit the initial timeline we set. We think to ourselves, you know what, I'm going to do this in 2 weeks, but it really takes 6. Or we think, okay, 30-day goal for sure. Nope, it took 3 months. Who cares? It still happened. You made it happen. You stuck with it all the way through. That's actually what matters. Don't change the goal, just change the timeline. Let's be honest, we are time-blind humans. Chances are we just set a really bad timeline because we have no idea how long it's going to take. Don't make that mean anything about you. Now you know, okay? Don't change the goal, change the timeline. Think of it like this. For sure the goal is going to happen, okay? Assume that it is as good as done. Then what? Then you just keep taking those smaller steps forward that we've talked about today. Hold that goal lightly. Focus on what you truly want, why you want it. Remind yourself that this is the thing you desire. Then set up those small, achievable wins every single day so you can fuel that dopamine, track your progress, celebrate your success. And that is what I have for you today, my friends. I am here to help us rewrite the story around goals and ADHD brains. I want us to start seeing the powerful potential in them as long as we are setting them in a healthy, ADHD supportive way. As long as we are holding them loosely and we are pursuing these dreams and these desires from a place of fun and curiosity and problem solving and delight. And if you want to take this work further, if you are ready to implement what we learn here and actually make these big changes in your life, if you want to get things done by working with your brain and actually enjoy the life that you have worked so hard to create, then join us in We're Busy Being Awesome. The March cohort is almost here, so head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group where you can learn more and sign up. If you are listening to this later on, past March, no problem. Add your name to the waitlist for the next cohort. And if you are enjoying this podcast, would you be a rock star and leave a 5-star review or share it with a friend? It's such a powerful way that you can help grow the podcast and get these tools to even more ADHD brains who need them. There are step-by-step instructions to leave a review right in the show notes, and I genuinely appreciate it. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.